the topic is so deep and interesting that it gives me a lot of joy to share and start this panel discussion. We're going to be talking about disruptions and our readiness for supply chain resilience. How do our supply chains bounce back? And on the panel discussion right now, we have more than 200 years of rich experience in the sector across the supply chain. In addition, we have people on the panel right now who are working with sales and also have worked with finance. So I'm really looking forward to a lot of insights and learning from this panel discussion. We know about the disruptions that we've seen in the last 3 years, be it the pandemic years, the Suez Canal, the geopolitical, and then the shutdown in the Chinese economy. I would first request Mr. Anjani to share your views. No, you can take a mic here.
Take 1 minute.
Okay. Yeah.
So thank you very much. I would just like to touch few things and very short also because we have limited time. Now, in terms of disruption, basically you know that there are a lot of disruption we have seen over the COVID times and also natural disasters, climate change issues, geopolitical. We don't know what's going to happen with Israel war. And then all the seasonalities are also very important. We don't know when and what season, what can change. So that's also important. Some of people are in the agro products, so this is also seasonal. So if there are problems with respect to drought, it can be even worse then. Strikes is another part, and there are a lot of companies, if they have a lot of orders, they can go for forced merger and then play around. So we have to be very careful there. And the other important thing which is also causing disruption is also the dollar. Basically, we see in some of the countries who are not able to import because of they can't go for LCs and there are dollar issues which are there. Now, in order to make sure that how do we make this plan very robust and resilient is early signs is very critical. How quick you can respond to this whole scenario and then a flexibility to do it because everyone will not be able to do it. You require also money in terms of inventory to manage. And we need to really build up a plan in terms of risk management, in terms of identifying these critical functions and assets which you carry because that will also define how will you react to the situation. The impact analysis because this comes first. I just got from Israel part what could be the impact coming in with respect to the fuel and the crude, how it moves up. And then they set the objectives and priorities, very clear resource allocation will be very important because there are disruptions, we need to put in some resources behind and also business continuity, how do you continue the business in the disruptions, disaster management plan, and then also look at your supplier and partner, they have to be also totally linked and aligned with you in terms of the engagement to deliver. I feel training becomes an important part again and create more awareness in the whole strategy plus communication. So, I mean, this will be very important and in terms of these things, communicating to your vendors, to your stakeholders is going to be critical to avoid problems around in terms of liabilities, data backup issues, and then supply chain diversification. So these are many of these points which I mentioned in terms of planning, especially that's what I was about to communicate. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for keeping it so short and so rich in the content. So there are themes that our companies have learned during the pandemic around collaboration, around enhancing visibility, around flexibility. I would request Mahendra now to you to please share with us around visibility, the tracking capabilities and how it helped your company to pass through and build this missile of resilience.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Basically from the pandemic, and this is, I think, would be everyone's learning so far, that the companies learned to do things differently for sure during the pandemic. And I would say that since the time, and when we talk about track and trace, when we introduced at LANXESS the track and trace, basically the GPS topics in 2014, none of the transporters knew what is the GPS. I'm talking about the regions in MP and Gujarat. And now the pandemic was the time when this was the topic which was most relied on. Because then we were trying to see that, okay, this vehicle will reach my plant, and then the same vehicle I have to use it. So then entire planning has to be based on whereabouts of those vehicles. And I think this is also very important now that when we talk about building the resilience, and obviously the lot of discussions that we have heard since the morning about the AI, talking about how technology can be used. And I think Mr. Nair has mentioned that this is something which has helped a big size company like Reliance. But I think it's also about all the people who are in the logistics industry to have something thinking about customer. And we are talking also not only about the inventory as a topic, but we are also talking about what we are giving to our customer for the visibility topic. For us, it's also one thing which we have developed during these times, that we also give direct applications to the customers where they can track their vehicles, the entire order. So if he has placed 10 orders, he can see it at one go with the invoice details and with the tracking where the material is. And that is something which I think is very important to give that traceability to the customer as well. So building resilience is not only about building your own capabilities, but also giving that edge to the customer that, okay, he knows that this is a reliable partner for us.
Sure, thank you. That's very insightful. Also, to build onto that same point, visibility to your partners upstream and downstream about your demand plans, about your expectations over a rolling period and more real time helps in better preparation. So asking for that partnership to your customers definitely helps you build that resilience. Next point that comes to thought is when things went down and there was huge dependence on China, we are hearing on China plus one. We are not only China plus one, within the country, if I have a local supplier and I have dependence on one supplier, having learned through the challenges of the pandemic period, we are getting onto the strategy of having one more supplier. So I would request Ravindra ji, you to share some thoughts. What has been your strategy and your experience on adding suppliers, and what's the experience? Please share us.
Hello. Good afternoon. So adding suppliers is a dilemma actually. It's a balance to be maintained because the number of suppliers are increased. Your quantity distributions are going down, and then you lose on your quantity discounts during your negotiations. So it's a balancing game. Second thing is also a part of risk mitigation, wherein you are particularly required not to be, like the old saying goes, not to put all eggs in one basket. So it is required, but how to balance it out? So what we are doing is we have made a matrix wherein our few points are taken from suppliers, where their reliability is considered, their capability to supply, the volumes, that is considered, and then their on time in full and other things which we normally take into account for vendor rating. So what we do is whatever quantities we are taking from suppliers, we are keeping some plus and minus range in that. So the scalability of the supplier to give you more volumes has been given a higher weightage in the vendor rating or vendor approval. And now that is what is giving us a good go ahead when the things are normal and even when the things are not so normal. So these suppliers are chosen from different geographies. Of course, India is the best option, domestic is the best option. But yes, we have the imported suppliers as well, where not all are from China. We see to it that there are Chinese suppliers, there are European suppliers, there are US suppliers, and of course the Asia Pacific suppliers. So the moment you have the scalability and the volume distribution, you have the brackets where you can reduce or increase the volumes with a particular supplier. And any disruption goes in any of these suppliers, you can immediately hike the percentage lifting from the other suppliers. So this matrix has to be calculated very, very minutely, and there has to be an agreement with the supplier, because there will be certain lead time required even for suppliers to give higher volumes. And then when you are doing your vendor ratings, you also need to see whether the scalability, what we are talking about, whether the supplier has the scalability, what is his overall production capacity, and what is his current order book or the order book for the year. So that gives us a good balance between amongst the suppliers, and then you can manage your optimum cost, you can do your risk mitigation, and you can manage your inventories as well. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. That's good. That brings to me a thought here is when I bring in a new supplier, I'm also bringing in knowledge, thought or creativity, innovation from the supplier side to me. What have been our experiences? And I'll take the question to Vishal, you. What has been your experience in adding a supplier and also looking at it as an opportunity to revise our BOMs, our recipes in conjunction and working together with the supplier? That will add flexibility to our supply chain.
Thanks, Shammi. Taking the clue from Ravindra ji that when we add many suppliers, it definitely brings the benefit, but also brings the complexity. And when it brings the complexity, which is good, because sometimes why it is good, that the world is changing. Sometimes the chemicals company are consolidating. Some of the chemicals are really getting obsolete, and some of the chemicals are getting added. The expectation from the organizations and the chemical industry is that we have to be eco-friendly, we have to be sustainable, and that's why certain old chemicals may not be really viable for the new future. And that's why all this new chemistry, the new knowledge from the suppliers and the new chemistry has to get incorporated. How we can do that? There are 2-3 things which we can do. We really cannot have the 100% BOM replacement. We can replace one of the chemical and one of the BOM, but also at the same time, the same chemical and the same BOM can give the same benefit than the earlier, or the better benefit than the earlier. And then automatically, we need to analyze each and every characteristics of that particular chemistry till the end. Having said that, there may be thousands in the BOMs which each and every chemical company may be having. Can we really replace everything? No, we cannot, because it adds too much of the pressure on the existing resources. And that is why we need to do the prioritization, which we have done in our company also. So top 10 real prioritization or the high impact chemicals which we had identified, even if maybe a chemical which go in a small quantity but can have a higher impact on the overall application, and also at the same time the top line and the bottom line. So we had identified those first, and we had replaced those chemistry or the chemicals with the alternate one, so that we also can have the less dependency on one supplier, one geography, and also the one particular BOM. And that's what has helped us to have the multiple BOMs in place. There are many things, but I will not go much in detail. We will keep it for the rest for the question and answers.
Definitely. So that's a good thinking point here. Alternate recipes help us bring in flexibility to be able to respond with much more agility and resilience if and when a disruption strikes us. There's one more flexibility that we've seen industry partners to exercise, which is around packaging, around transportation modes. So I would like to hear from you, Mitesh. What has been your experience using these levers when the disruption struck your company?
Yes, so I'll stick to examples because they stick. During COVID, I think one disruption was around availability of labor. Now, the industry that we operate in, a lot of our products are liquid or sold in the molten form. Their melting points could be between 40 to 140 degrees Celsius. And one drive that we really started was how do we transport this material without breaking it into small packaging. So converting everything that we used to sell in drums or in flakes or pellets form and then moving it to bulk, in tanker loads, if it is a domestic transport, or in ISO tanks, if it is international transport, which first made it inherently safe. There is no exposure. In tankers, you can have completely closed systems. Cost is optimized. And also, what happened was, eventually, for us as well as for the customers, inventory also tends to be optimized. Because when you are storing materials in the molten form, there is only so much space that is available, which is the storage tank. When you tend to store as solids, you can, rent as many warehouses as you want. So, on packaging, that drive, and I would recommend and encourage everybody to also look about these things in your organizations and work with your suppliers to do so. In terms of logistics, what happened was, with the outbreak of Russia-Ukraine war, what changed really was the availability of bulk vessels to move materials. A lot of trade flows changed significantly, and availability of vessels for bulk movement really changed. What we were able to very quickly adapt to is, how do we build an alternate mode of transportation. So again, using an example, a certain chemical that we used to, earlier supply chain used to be factory to port in road tankers, then bulk storage at the port, then moving in bulk to a foreign port, let's say in the US, storing it in bulk again, and then from there distributing it in via road or railways. What we shifted to was, and within a matter of 2 months, to moving this material in ISO containers. So from the factory, ISO containers moving via the ocean, and then at the foreign destination, directly transloading material in a safe, closed manner from these ISO containers to rail, and then delivering it to the customer. So basically, all of these things are possible. So when a disruption occurs, how do you very quickly react to it and change? And there are multiple levers to it. Yeah, thanks.
My mic is now back. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Mitesh. So as I told you, we also have amongst us on the panel a person who's a finance expert. Now, as supply chain professionals, we have added inventory after the disruption struck us. From a JIT scheme of things, which we had perfected over 10 years of effort, suddenly we said, oh, we need more inventory, and now we have a just-in-case inventory, and we built inventories across all nodes, and all of us know this. So I want to hear from you, Ramanuj, from a supply chain and a finance hat, both. What has been your experience in justifying increase of inventory and the strategy behind it in what you followed in your company?
Am I audible? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. So yeah, this is a very pertinent question, because we all saw that the inventory values and the working capital, the way they spiked when there were so many shortages during the pandemic. Somehow, the norm got redefined. The way we used to define the safety stock, that itself got redefined. There was a phase, I remember that, post-pandemic, I mean, for several months, people were not even talking about the safety stocks. It was more like, every warehouse was filled up, and, you should be stocking up as much as you can. Of course, then when we talk about the P&L impact, the balance sheet impact, the finance folks are already, always after the supply chain. While it's not only driven by the supply chain, the whole culture, I think, it got towards that kind of a thinking, I would say. Wherein, there was too much of inventory, too much of working capital, the P&L started bleeding because you are talking about the carrying cost, the disposal costs, materials getting expired, there's so much. So I think what we did was that, there was a rethinking within the organization to redefine again the safety stock, because in the hindsight, we realized it was too much of things driven by pandemic, which of course is like, once in a century kind of an incident. Of course, there has to be a balance, but, we cannot be having too much of caution and comfort built up in the safety stock. And also, if I look back, in the last 5-6 years, in fact, the way the technology has grown, the way the things have got digitized in terms of the B2B, B2C connections. In fact, whatever existed pre-pandemic, that should have been improved a bit. But on the contrary, things were not going in that direction. So I think there is a strong need again to redefine the safety stock levels. And again, it cannot be that, one formula works for all. There could be exceptions. But then stocking up too much is not the right solution, because eventually that also leads to a lot of bleeding as much as the shortage was doing. So I think that is what we are doing now. We are in the correction mode, and yes, utilizing all the tools and digital transformation kind of things. We are trying to redefine what is the right level of inventory.
Thank you. We've also worked with various companies as Kearney. We do agree with your philosophy. There has to be a segmented approach for each of our inventory SKUs, depending on the supply variability, lead times, and demand variability, and the supply promises that we have made to our customers. Accordingly, segmenting your SKUs and raw materials and WIP, and then accordingly reviewing the norms is the right path forward. That brings us to one more disruption that we are seeing, and that's digital disruption. While it is an enabler, it is also a disruption as we see it. Are we keeping pace with our suppliers and our customers on their IT evolution cycles? Love to hear from you, sir, Mr. Raghavan, on what has been your experience on the digital space and how your company has benefited from the digital investments and evolution in this space.
Thank you, Samir. First of all, it's a great opportunity and a lot of visibility we have in this room. I come from Larsen, Toubro, Energy Hydrocarbon Division. Let us think about why technology, okay? We have done great big projects 10 years before without technology, and without technology means without track and trace, without GPS, and without what if scenarios, modeling, artificial intelligence, okay. I worked in Jamnagar plant where I built the grassroots refinery, okay. For 7 years I was there, including the debottlenecking. And what is that we are bringing now from 10 years before and 10 years now, okay. When I speak about technology, right, we devise a lot of options, multiple options when we do the what if scenarios. So disruption, okay, where challenges across the world, because we have war, rotten countries from Ukraine, now is Israel, pandemic, okay. The technology what we are now, I should say thanks to what pandemic has done, okay. The online sales we talk about, right, has increased tripled 4 times. People started using online, right? Everything is coming to digital and the sales have increased. So that is what technology has brought in. You sit in a room, you design, okay? It brings visibility, it brings decision making, okay? We talk about everything. And one more thing, what it has is productivity, okay? See, all these things add to the technology. And more important, right, when you're working with customers, and again, coming back that if disruption happens, what is that technology is going to bring? We collaborate, we see that what disruption happening and what is the next options we can bring so that the material reaches site. Okay. Let me put a flavor to what we do in the hydrocarbon business. So we do a business in logistics alone, right? We
talk of these GPS monitoring devices at all of our sites. First of all, we had a drive where we harmonized GPS and this data sharing with a logistics control room that we built centrally at Baroda. And wherever this is not available, we give the device free to the transporter. So if you want to do business with Aarti, take this GPS and this is the data from this is what is going to be tracked, monitored, and so on and so forth. So it's not much in terms of the cost overall if you look at it versus the benefits that you get.
Thanks Mitesh. One last question.
Hi, my name is Rajesh Yadav and my question to Mr. Ramanuj. How we can redefine the safety stock? Even the plant is working 24/7 and the demand is low now.
Yeah, okay. Maybe, I'll touch upon, the last part, what you mentioned, the demand is slow. What the industry has also witnessed is that, when the safety stock norms got redefined, the entire value chain, okay, it was more like, everybody's warehouse is quite filled up. That was also one of the reasons which led to, a drop in demand. Again, when we say safety stock, it's more about, getting back to the history a bit before the pandemic levels or before pandemic what was existing. It's very important to see that because most of the change that has happened in the mindset or about the formula of the safety stock. It is coming because of pandemic. It's coming because, everybody wants too much of cushion and comfort. There was a time as if, building up filling up the warehouses is the solution to everything. So, I mean, the whole industry has now realized that. That has been a learning, bitter in some cases. But then when we talk about redefining the safety norms, it is again going back to the history and also look at the recent developments that have happened in terms of the data analytics, the way the systems are integrated, the way the information is flowing seamlessly, and what kind of digital tools are available to predict and forecast better. In fact, the challenge to the industry would be to improve what was existing earlier. And also, as we mentioned, the safety stock also doesn't have to be a common formula across all the SKUs. There could be some exception wherein, even 90, 120 days stock is very important, but then the norm cannot be that, everything requires 90 days. There are items which can be carried for 20 days also, or else there are items which can be carried for 120 days also. It's a need to have a relook a bit more into detail with more information and more recent information that is available, and along with, all the IT tools and the data that is available now.
For me, safety stock is a luxury. There are some products you can go for MTO. So like what he is saying, every SKU will have a different safety stocks. It all depends upon the situation you are in and how the lead times are there. Sometimes you have to put in, as I said, MTO. Sometimes if you have local suppliers, then you don't need also a safety stocks. The lead time in the JIT stocks especially can take care of that. But if there are long lead times and there are also clearing and forwarding issues, then you need to put in a bit of safety stocks. Because I feel the management normally would like to avoid to release the cash out of the safety stock.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. With this, we would like to close
One
this.
more.
Oh, yes, Ravindra, sir.
For safety stocks, you can do one simple thing, is reduce the frequency of recalculating the safety stock. If you are doing it once in a year, make it 6 months, every 6 months. You can make it every day also.
Lovely, thanks. Okay, and I'm sure if there are more questions, we are going to be available with you on lunch, and then we can talk over lunch. Thank you so much, panelists. It was lovely moderating this session for me.